When we evaluate security tools, we are looking for the wrong things. You've probably heard about and assessed security tools based on things like IDE plugins, pull request comments, and developer usability. However, the details of each of those things really matter a lot. So today I want to really highlight why some things like IDE plugins are not as helpful as they might appear. And what are some workflows that actually can help drive results, as opposed to things like, here's a PR comment with 100 vulnerabilities, go ahead and get started. So let's get right on into it. The thing I did here was install an IDE plugin. Again, I chose Sneak, not to beat up on them or anything. They just have an easy to install one that's there, which is a good thing. So this is a positive thing about their IDE. But in general, IDE plugins are where people's thoughts first go for, oh, if only a developer could see the issues right when they're coding, they would just go and fix stuff. The reality of using this, though, is very different than how you might expect it to be. And something like this, just to give a simple example, I just added this new code just to give some very basic examples where I'm setting an insecure cookie. I'm doing a cross-site scripting vulnerability from an older version of jQuery, and I'm going to do a secret key thing here in a minute. But first, let's just focus on these, right? Very basic new vulnerabilities where I am setting up a insecure cookie and I'm accepting a raw URL, and then I am rendering that straight back out to the user, and it will interpret JavaScript on the fly. So these are two rather obvious vulnerabilities, but immediately we see IDEs being super annoying because usually when a developer gets into a new project, they're either going into it for the first time because they're taking it over, doing an update of some kind, or this is something they're working on all the time and they're just adding a simple new functionality and want to deploy and test it. But immediately we see just that like the IDE plugin is not super valuable. And the main issues with it is that it's not how developers work. We're like, I'm not going to fix stuff like this, frankly, until I get a ticket, because I'm not tracked on diving in the different SaaS issues, fixing it, marking it a false positive, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to do a video on auto fixing soon, so I'm not going to comment on clicking that quite yet to do a little fix. But for now, just the way that this works, where you've got all these vulnerabilities that sort of show up in the code, and there's not like an easy ignore process, right? So I can see here code security, there's all these issues and there's no clear expectation, right? The thing I would want to do is ignore this and never see it again. Say this is something we decided we can't fix. Say we decided that this is a false positive. The main issue is trying to manage like a workflow in the IDE plugins is usually non-existent. Or if it is, it's pretty complicated because like I have to go out of my way to spend time like, all right, so I've got the SQL injection, I've got this different scoring. Sometimes in other tools, you'll see like an ID. And then I'll have to go into a file that's like a .sneak file or a .whatever file and add this to the list. And that's just not a scalable experience for developers to use, to have to train them on how to navigate and add things. It's not simple and intuitive the way that people often think, oh, if they just saw all these issues, surely they would fix it. Not really. And the SCA side of things is even worse. Like here you can see the Sneak ID plugin raising all these issues that exist. Is the idea that I, as a developer, am going to stop everything I'm doing and try to patch like 12 different package level vulnerabilities? Probably not, right? And so all this to say that this isn't really a workflow, right? A lot of times when people think about the things they want from a security tool, they want an IDE plugin so developers can fix things as soon as they come up, or they want pull request comments, which is what we'll get to. The problem with both of those things is they don't really match exactly what a developer is thinking. So I'm going to show the way that Arnica handles it because I think it's actually a really good example of thinking through the details of how developer workflows can best be addressed via these different tools. So let's, for a moment, go ahead and open this up and just take a look at our vulnerabilities here again. We've got this. I also made a small change to just downgrade the version of jQuery so that it shows up as a new finding, right? So we can pretend I have introduced this vulnerability and we've got these different vulnerabilities here. And again, I'll come back to the secret later because the workflow for secret scanning is another big issue. So if I hop out here into Arnica, you'll see your normal stuff that like all tools have of dashboards of different findings, yada, yada, what they do, different reachability stuff like we've been talking about. But the big thing I want to talk about is there's these out of the box policies that Arnica does that I was super impressed with because they're very focused on actually trying to get stuff done. So here they have a few good practices and best practices laid out in these rules. And I just want to talk about them because I think they're really well thought out for how stuff should work when it comes to remediating found vulnerabilities. So this first one is about notifying the person who is pushing the code when there's a new medium severity risk via a ChatOps integration, so Slack or Teams. But I'll show you an example of that. Same here, where then it will then comment on a pull request when the failed status check is there. And I'll talk a little bit about the details within that pull request matter a lot. And then there's this developer recognition, which the team calls the woot woot feature, which is fun because it's trying to gamify and give even the smallest reward for actually fixing something, because that's the goal of using these tools, right? The problem as security people is usually we do a demo and we see all these findings and we go, oh, this is incredible. Whoa, look at all this stuff. And then it never gets fixed. And that's the frustration that I've had. That's the frustration that many people have had. And so I think just these couple of things, like the pull request comment, and again, I'll show an example of it, combined with the ChatOps flow, and then I'll show how they apply this to secrets as well, really do a good job at actually trying to get people to get things fixed. All right. I went ahead and changed some of the vulnerabilities so that we can get a better example going here. This is a brand new CVE on DOM iterator. I added it to my package list here, and so this should trigger some more stuff. All right, here we go. So the first thing I want to show is how this shows up in Slack here, where immediately I get a ping via Slack. And what I really like about this is actually super rare because a lot of tools don't have the context of who was the user that pushed this and how can we like look up who that user was in Slack. And so instead what you'll see is a lot of other tools have this generic security testing channel where they'll comment, here's the status of all your issues, here's when a new issue gets pushed, or it's something that you have to like manually configure per group. But what is just super, super elegant about the way that Arnica's done it is that this ping goes directly to me with the issue of where it's been discovered and why. And so here I have immediately a few options for what to do about it, right? I can either acknowledge or dismiss it, or I can open it in Arnica. And when I do the open in Arnica button, what I like about this too is it just opens a unauth open web page here where I don't have to authenticate or do anything. I can just go directly here. This is a short-lived web page. And I can see here's what's happened with it. This issue has been PR commented, it's been a Slack DM, and I can come up here and see more about why this failed. All right, so what's cool about this is I can either acknowledge it or dismiss it or open it up, get the details of it. So when I acknowledge that, the status went to in progress, and if I had hit reject, it would have been dismissed, and I could have put why. And so that's just the simple sort of workflows that exist via the Slack option. The other thing that matters a lot is the pull request. And so I want to just take a look at why different pull request methodologies matter. Unfortunately, a lot of teams look at pull requests as like a feature checkbox, where if it does a comment on the PR, then it's a checkbox for the feature works. But you can see some different things here where like Socket, for example, is telling me that a new dependency was detected or added. I can see analysis from dry run that's here, but check marks, this example is how a lot of tools look, where it's telling me like every seed that exists in this repo when I do a push. And that's just not super helpful because again, I'm not trying to fix all of this stuff. I just need to know the thing that I did that I know how to fix. And so Arnica is the only tool here, and I have a bunch of them plugged in to the repo, that comments both the specific line of code that detected the change and then had a suggested reviewer of, hey, we're going to call out myself in this case because I'm the most likely person to help with this because I'm the only owner in this repo. And then I can even interact with Arnica via the comment. Here I can acknowledge or dismiss with a reason, which I could have done via the Slack ops as well. But here I can say to dismiss. ChatGPT told us that it's just fine. If I comment that, then pull this back up, you can see now that it was dismissed with risk accepted as the reason. And so when it comes to this idea of developers never interacting with the UI itself, which is what a lot of security people think, it's really this level of detail on the workflows is what makes that actually possible. Where I can come in here and I've gotten the PR comment with the accurate information and I can just via the PR mark something as a false positive or say I'm going to fix it. Same with via Slack, I can go in and again, do the workflow management from these other tools. So that's more on the developer side. From the security side, the other attention to detail here is the reality of opening tickets is unavoidable for this stuff. And so here, their prioritization is part of it. But here, this is meeting all my criteria, right? There's a fix available. It's a real vulnerability here. It's a reachable vulnerability. We should definitely go and fix it. Here, all I have to do is click this to create a Jira ticket. And then again, it's the quality of the ticket that really matters here, where it's telling me the location, the author, the commit message, where that introduced it, the different versions I can go to. And so here, what really matters is the suggested fixing, whether it's from the author of the code, the person who pushed it, or the repository owner in general. This will be like a team or list of users if there were more people in this repository. But this is the kind of guidance that lets people, hey, we should go ahead and get this done. All right, so now let's take a look at the woot woot feature where I will just pick one of these vulnerabilities. We've got this allow privilege escalation set where I've got the security context set to privilege equals true. I will go ahead and delete that. I will check out a new branch. You can see this is also the annoying part of IDE plugins is every time you save a file, they basically run a rescan. And it's just annoying to have so much like moving pieces happening at once. And there's really no way around that. Fix it. Create a new branch, pull request here. So you can see here just for fun, I get a fun GIF with a victory. And if I fix more things, I get more code risk fixes. These are just the little things that help bring the fun when it comes to fixing this stuff. We will do things for GIFs. So that's really what I wanted to show as far as like how these policies go to help of just having the ability to meet people where they're at, whether it's a simple ticketing workflow or creating Slack workflows or pull request workflows. All of those things exist in a way where the quality of the individual thing matters a lot. And so now I want us to take a look at the secret remediation workflow, because that's something where Arnica has actually really done an amazing job as well at showing how there's a lot of issues with fixing secrets and a lot of details that tend to get missed. And I just want to show some of those things. Okay, so here I've got these hard-coded secrets now with the username and password, and these are real hooked up to an AWS account that just have access to S3 buckets, and that's really it. I'm going to delete these later, obviously. But this typically causes a bit of an issue for security teams. First, because there's a lot of reasons that secret keys might get used, whether they're known like honey tokens, where you actually want them to be hard-coded because you're testing some different things, or someone forgot to leave something in there, but it's not actually wired to anything. So there's this big false positive issue. But then the other issue is typically you want pre-commit hooks, but those require either some setup from the GitHub side or a full-blown agent to install. And so either way, pre-commit hooks create a lot of issues, but typically it's how you would stop something like this is like GitHub, for example, on public repos won't allow you to add this key at all in the first place. But because of those different nuances and issues with it, the way that Arnica has gone about this is pretty interesting, where I can add these changes, commit them, and push it up. So here in GitHub, I have to allow the secret. Again, this is just because it's a public repo and some different setting stuff. But now if I push it, all right, so now I was able to add these. And so here I get that Slack message again that a secret was detected. And here's what's super interesting about what Arnica does is they've automatically mitigated this secret. And so if I go and open up GitHub, you can see now, even though I've pushed those up, if I actually go to the branch, you'll see that new fixes branch is no longer here, but now there's this mitigated by Arnica branch. And if I look at the commit, I can see that it actually redacted those secret keys automatically. So it deleted the original branch and created a new branch with the mitigation already in place. And then I can go back to Slack. And I reset now to this branch. And I push it. And I now have a mitigated version of my new fixes change. And so that was a very simple workflow, trying to redact this from a commit history, because this new branch will also go through the commit history, clean all of that up as well. Typically, it's a non-trivial process to run a separate tool to go through. Usually it's Git filter. And I talk about this a little bit in the LinkedIn learning course I did, like how to actually remediate this takes more time. And so this little workflow here is just very developer focused as far as how to remediate it. And that's what I mean by just assessing tools based on how they help us fix things instead of just how they help us find things. Altogether then, to summarize what I think is helpful about the stuff that Arnica has done with these different workflows is the quality of the Slack remediations, the quality of the Jira tickets, the pull requests. These are the little things that go a long way to actually helping developers fix things way further than if you were to just do a checkbox, right? Just as an example, there are some big differences between these different comments, and not every pull request comment has the same quality to it or the same helpfulness to it. All of that to say, let's think about our workflows when we help developers fix stuff, and it'll go a long way.